doesn't work or something happens. All
Perfect.
right, if you're ready, we're going.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. All right, welcome in everybody. Welcome to the Women's Wellness Network and welcome to our guest today, Laura. Hello, Laura. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you, Tammy. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And it's nice to have you here. And of course, one of the first questions I always ask is, where in the world are you?
I am in Ontario, in Ajax
Oh,
specifically.
oh my goodness. Okay, you're just like down the road,
Where are
not very
you?
far. I am near Orangeville.
No way.
Yes way. Yes
Oh,
way.
fantastic. Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
fantastic. Then we'll have opportunities to get together in person.
Yes, we will, right? Pretty cool. That I
Yeah,
love this. I love this network. I love these doing these things and it's always a surprise. It's global, right? We are global, but when
yeah,
you find somebody who's like that close, it's exciting. So
yeah,
it's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you're so near me.
yeah, me too. Well, you were speaking of this Las Vegas event, and we actually connected on a call with Greg Braden last
Right?
week. So I had no anticipation that you might actually be local. That is so fantastic.
Right, pretty wild. Yeah, amazing. And yeah, SGLA has been a big part of my world and a part of my network. There's a lot of SGLA people in my network. And over in ENTV, the big group that I was telling you about, there's many SGLA people there too. So very heart-centered, very wonderful, lovely human beings. So I think you're going to like them. So, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you, Laura. We want to know more about you. And so first of all, can you just start off by introducing yourself a little bit and telling us who you are?
Yeah, so I am a 37-year-old woman that has learned the power of standing in my private capacity at all times, even when stepping into the public, to interact with others through different platforms that I wouldn't be aware of had I not stepped into rooms that then opened doors through the people that I met in those places. And I say that because Peaceful Inner Warriors United is an initiative that I founded and that I spoke to in my first book, Fully Committed, The Sacred Sojourn of Now, which is about the hero's journey from a soulful perspective, using my own story as the framework that I told a lot of. Now, this is what you should not do. Now, let that be a lesson to you from my experience of what I learned so that I could say, hey, don't go that way when people were going in the direction that I went. And so I like to use the experiences that I've had in order to really help people get the lessons from them. And then I've also been working on the empowered storytelling method that helps us really shift from telling the story based on, like, you didn't know I was a seed when you tried to bury me, and that empowered victim. That I don't mean that disrespectfully, but like culturally, it's just we've
Hmm.
become so accustomed to bonding and uniting based on our wounds that I think our focus now it's time to really shift upwards to the flower or the tree or the blossoms and blooms that came from that experience. And I say this because in 2019, I made a crazy call that changed it all. And I say that because I got locked up under the Mental Health Act for 2.5 weeks. And I had the experience of having my sanity questioned. And I had always been different and I'd always kind of seen things in a different way because I operate very intuitively and heart-based. And so I move and groove in a way that most haven't had an opportunity to. But I've really lived aligned to my values, and my grandparents were my best friends. And so I really set my life so that I could be with them and care for them, and they cared for me. And so that was really a big piece of my identity. And so in 2019, when I made a crazy call to the police to report the system was corrupt and they were in on it, but there must be some good ones, and I'm here to help bring peace to this world, so take me to your leaders, and felt totally justified that like I was tuning into the timeline that I'm now living. But I was doing it before I had any of the context to even have any authority or position in life to be able to make such a declaration. that I had my sanity questioned. And I knew I wasn't insane, but I'd also done 8 DMT ceremonies like 6 months before that that like blew my world open. And like I lost the box. I didn't just like lose, it's gone. Like what was before and then what became after those experiences I can't even express. And in 2017, I started writing a book that became so much part of my identity that writing it was just became an obsession. And so my identity became vested in what I was doing, which was writing this book that I couldn't finish because I finished 3 manuscripts and deemed them not enough, just like my own story, because we follow patterns, which was
Right.
what I've been learning how to do and unpacking. And when I got locked up and had my sanity questioned and had to advocate for myself and had my family not stand by me the way that my dad had always been the one to, help me if I really needed it. But I never messed up as much as what I did because I was outing patterns and stories that weren't mine to tell. And I was causing harm through that process. And that's the problem when we tell those stories of being the seed that got buried compared to the bloom that grew from it. And so that's really been what part of my journey it's been about because yeah, 6 months after that crazy experience totally shattered my reality. And I ended up going into the mental health system to really try to get help. And when I realized that you get waitlisted and you're only able to get help if you're willing to completely surrender your power and to make yourself dependent on the system. I realized that it's really just designed to break spirits, and I refused. And so I have spent the last 5 years proving my sanity in some ways. And 2.5 years ago, when I got the drop intuitively of the Justinian deception significance, and that was after having got a summons for speaking at a rally in 2021 that basically called me back to life because after being locked up under the mental health system for those 2.5 weeks and writing about it in the book, and one chapter in particular, my 10th floor nightmare, is on 10th floor in St. Joseph's in Hamilton, which is a science experiment without windows and
Ugh.
where they lie to patients and they avoid eye contact with patients to dehumanize and to make you feel less important and less significant. And it was such a crazy experience. And I was tuning into the energetic patterns of what happens there. And people get raped very easily. And it's because you don't have access to, or you don't have power over who comes into your room when it's the professionals who can come in and do what they wish and then leave and say, oh, she's crazy anyway. Who's going to believe her? And then there's so much of that culturally that has been taking place that when I experienced what I did in 10th floor, particularly, which I didn't get harmed in any way while I was there, but I witnessed enough and was part of the energetics of it to the level where I asked for I wanted to speak to a lawyer and I was denied the right to without approval from a psychiatrist who wasn't on duty. So I didn't get what I knew that I needed or thought that I needed because I didn't know that when I allow someone to represent me, then I am the third person in my own story, just like what I was rendered for those 2.5 weeks when I wasn't allowed to speak for myself and I didn't get the final vote. And I was the other on the other side of an order. And so I experienced the energetic vampirism of a system designed to feed off of us. And so then I had a breakdown within the 6 months after that, that then led me to I was teaching English to kids in China at the time as well.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, I was tuning into what was going on over there before the rest of the world had been hit energetically. I was teaching these students and their parents and tuning into the energetics and what was not being said, but I could feel. And all of these pieces and winding up at the Hilton Embassy Suites, where there was a CIA FBI agent conference happening while I was there,
Oh,
kind
wow.
of compounds things. It's just like the amount of craziness that is associated with riding the magic of the moment. When we are just stop thinking about it and go with the flow, we can put ourselves in a lot of danger. But that's what the fool's journey is all about. And so I offer all of this context because in 2021, after having had my breakdown in 2020 and winding up on the front lines as a cashier at the superstore locally, and basically being in the meeting where somebody tested positive and they were shutting it down early on the Thursday night of Easter before Good Friday because it was closed that day. And I think that they were changing the 5G within the superstore. And sometimes I would get headaches while in there, and I don't normally experience headaches. But when frequencies are introduced into our environment, we are energetically perceptive to it. And I would spend time in these places without having to go through the insanity that everyone else did, because instead of having to wait and getting scared, I got sent to the front lines, quite literally, of a different kind of war than what we were ever expected or wherever we're told would happen, which is the nuclear family model being the nuclear war we weren't warned of.
Right.
So,
Yeah, a totally different kind of war. And yes, how amazing to put it in those terms, the nuclear family. Yeah, it's been blown up. It really has. That's
yeah.
so interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, and the part of all of this is that when I then ended up, I got forced out because I refused to mask, and I had to take my authority back and actually sign my own exemption notice. Until then, I was forced out because my doctor refused to give anyone exemption notices for masking, and I believe it compromises your health. And so by because of that, I was forced out, and then I was unemployed, but I was supporting my grandpa. And so I gave him a great experience in his final days, in his final years. And ultimately, I also finished writing my book. I talked about the experience of getting locked up, of trying to prove my sanity, of putting down all of the theories I'd been writing about and trying to write about leading up to getting locked up when those theories failed me. And then I
Right.
had to learn things that could actually help me.
Right.
So I had to live them in order to know them truly and move out of the head and into the heart. And this has
Mhm.
really been what my work is around with the empowered storytelling method. It's moving out of our head and into our heart, but also going deep enough down the rabbit holes to, because of the experience that I had in 2019 getting locked up and then being humbled and put onto the front lines, to call myself part of the retraining brigade at the grocery store, where I was waking people up out of their trance and refused to mask because I recognized a universal smile is the way we communicate universally. And it was also the horror as all of the stuff about human trafficking was coming out, to recognize that if you can't see someone's facial expression or half of their mouth and you can only see their terrorized eyes, but everybody's already terrorized because like all you can
Right.
see is this part, it already actually triggers the body because you know you're interacting with someone who's bought into a fearful program. So
Right.
it's literally it's the virtue signaling that so much of what the masking is about, when we actually get to the level of identities, not talking about masks at all, but talking about social masks. And this is what I believe has been happening, that we have been dealing with symbolism and and and
Yeah.
idols and idolatry, and also idolizing our eyes. So it's like what we idol our eyes on, then
Right.
we're not looking at the guru within because we're looking at something outside of ourselves. And
Right.
religion has been used to legion us into different tribes based on belief systems and sects of belief. sections.
Right.
Sections of belief system are the sects that we believe, that are the BS, that are dividing us because you're right and I'm left. no, I'm not. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like I've never bought into politics. I've never chosen arm because if it's part of the same beast, which wing matters more than the
Right.
other?
Right. You can't fly with one. So how about
No.
that? Right. I always think about that. Um, the two sides, right? The blue and the red. And I want to be purple. Like I know I'm whole when I'm purple. So that's
Right.
where I try to strive to be, right? In that. And
Yeah.
I was going through, we'd had that little conversation before, and my journey of illness was quite, it was COVID time. So it was just a strange way to go through something so unknown. And
Yeah.
like you, right, having to find my own ways and figure out my own things. And I was so ill, I wasn't getting vaccinated. I didn't care. They could take me wherever they wanted, but I wasn't putting that in my body. I already had some weird poison in there, and I didn't, who
Right.
knew how it was going to react or how I would react or any of
Right.
that stuff. So being sovereign, being a sovereign being, is our birthright. It is, it's not up to that, whatever it is, the higher people that, the hierarchy of civilization, to dictate, what we do and what we don't do within our bodies. And that they took you and, you know, probably were trying to make you actually crazy, not just that they, give you that label. Um, but to see, if they can break people. And that's kind of the, especially at that time, the world was a
Mhm.
little bit crazy before we went into COVID. So coming out, all that kind of era afterwards is, I think everybody's just so confused, and that's part of the power, right? Is to confuse people.
Well, I got out 3 days before Event 201 took place in New York City. Event 201,
Oh.
you're familiar with the basically the pre-pandemic planning day of it's based on the Theater of the Oppressed, which
Mm,
has multiple expressions, including legislative theater. So
mm,
basically, this is in my rally speech that got me the summons that called me back to life in many ways to understand we're in a mixed war between the public and private and what that means and how to actually stand as a woman in my private capacity that can claim rights and make claims, not complaints. I'm not arguing. I'm making a
right.
claim. And I say any other man or woman in competent capacity has to step forward and make a counterclaim that is superior to mine own, or mine stands as true. And you have a certain number of days in order to do so, or else it's true. Mine stands. My claim, it's right because I wrote it. And this is actually where people don't understand the manor role, which is the court role. And this is why we have to get our houses in order. So
Mm,
I'm 6 days into the March Writing Challenge, which is where we're writing our rights. And we're recognizing what a manor role is, how to have responsible household management, and how to actually to know that writs are part of a responsible household that is managed. You have to have your writs, your titles, your claims. You have record of all of this because you have to court it again to the house or else it's not part of the house. So it's
right.
all of these identities that court us to the entities that are representing other things. And this is where all of our power gets externalized when we don't understand that juris is everything.
Right.
And juris is what is right or what is true. No, there is what are right is or what is true. Um, um, Juris is actually of law or of right, like it's of truth. That's what juris is responsible or in response to. It's what is law. It's the laws of the land, but people aren't recognizing the specialization of things. Like even the word sovereignty. I haven't heard anyone else putting forward the message that I am trying to convey to people, which a conveyance is how we convey information, it's how we convey notice, it's how we convey things. So conveyance is very important. But we really have to understand sovereignty and the fact it brings in royalism and monarchism in it with it. By nature of breaking the words down into sue being under or to sue someone else, sue, veil, as in true or what is right, in French, and then reine is queen in French. So you're under the true queen when you're sovereign, because you have to then have everything that is required to maintain and defend your kingdom. And kingdom is the king's domain because the king has a queen and the queen has a king. And that's because we're playing a chess game when we're bringing in the characters of entitlements that are actually connected to French class back when we were in school, and the auxiliary verbiage of Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp and La Maison d'Etre, which sounds like debtor. And that is the house of being. Sur, sous, dans, devant, derrière, devant, derrière, devant, derrière, à côté de, right? It's whose house are you on, under, in front of, behind, or beside? Whose house are you in? My house, my rules. Your house, your rules. If we don't know who is above our house, though, we're inviting in secret enemies. This is the Trojan horse of not understanding the bureaucratic matrix. And that's what's falling because we're realizing we're the ones who are here. We're the ones who are on this plane, and we don't need titles and positions and status in order to define us. We know who one another are based on our interactions with one another. We know when people were true to their word and when they weren't. And what has been happening within the bureaucratic matrix is people can just put up a different flagship and then just fly a different banner and say that they're a changed man or woman, change their identity even, change your gender even, which is the gender of drama, the genre of drama we're performing with our sex of belief systems. Do we buy in or out? Do we mask or not mask? Will we wear a social mask or not? Will we put emphasis onto one side of ourselves instead of recognizing CIDE is the side that we actually are killing or destroying? Because that's what a side is. It's genocide, menticide, homicide, suicide, democide, where the government kills its own people.
Hmm. Yeah, all these things happen though, right? And we definitely need to get on board with being aware, being open, being interested. Um, you know, it's our lives and we need to be responsible for them and the choices that we make. Ultimately,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
it, right? It comes down to us and what we want to see and what we don't want to see. And we need to make those decisions um, with with intellect and also with our heart. Because
yeah,
if your heart's not in there, you're not getting the full meal. You're not getting it all, right?
yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your work? You said you do some stuff with tarot, you do the hero's journey you were telling me. Tell me a little bit about that, please.
Well, I've been redefining it and re-sculpting it, and I've not been getting paid for what I've been doing for a long time because I haven't been working with people privately. I have been putting out a lot of content for free, but I have a strike against my YouTube channel under my name, Laura J.E. Hamilton, which means I can't monetize it unless I do the reach programming training. So it was a gift in some ways because it was in reference to the nanoparticles that were in injections that I referenced in relation to the doctor's talks that Wayne Peters was hosting back in 2021 when I was really involved with Ethics Over Fear and Freedom Forum Canada and Freedom Rising Canada and all of these freedom groups that I put Peaceful Inner Warriors United forward in order to try to help bring together those who were willing to take action, find the ones that were willing to take action. And Freedom Rising Canada has been gathering for every Friday for like 3+ years. And it's a big network. And it's really interesting because that was where I met Wayne Peters through, and then with Freedom Forum Canada as well. That was an alternative news station. And so it's relevant because I've been collecting people rather than trying to make money off of it because I was using the martyr story of I need people strong. I need warriors strong more than I need a bank account full of fiat currency that won't be worth anything when the markets collapse and people lose their identities and then they lose their lives because they don't know who they are without the things that I've lost so many times or not prioritized building, that when you ask me what I do or tell me about your business, my business is really helping people call their power back, to write a story where they stay the first person in their own house, so that we stop putting our power into these gender ideologies that displace us to the third person, so that a second party can tell our story for us and we don't realize that it is time to foreclose the accounts that let us pretend to be other than we are, and to level the playing field so that no pro has any business in my business. If I say it's private and they try to make it their business, I want to know where the profits are and I want in on the share. I want in on the job. The letters of commission, do you realize that letters of commission, letters of marque, letters of reprisal were actually issued by the souverain, the sovereign, to let the privateers who were private citizens, who then were given a job and task through the letter of marque or letter of commission, to go rob, loot, and then bring it back to the sovereign, get their cut for adding to the sovereign's territory. And then we call that nationalism. And kingdoms that are claimed domains by said king,
Right.
and we're part of that. Like, do you realize that we're actually listed as agricultural units in the stock market where our birth certificates are traded through our use of name?
That's horrifying.
It shouldn't be though, because we when we actually look at it, like yes, it is horrifying, and the reality is that that's what a citizen is. It's property of a country. What is proper to the country is what is its chattel or cattle. And that's what we've been deemed. They bet on how profitable we'll be. We have a different value based on what we have done to raise our stock. We're
Right.
traded in the stock market. We're used to the bears and the bulls, but we weren't told about bear trusts or naked trusts and naked owners. And so we were made to think it's better to clothe ourselves, which is why in Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp's house, les vêtements are the clothes that we wear as titles, statuses, and suits that we put on. And that's why in the tarot, you've got the minor arcana, which are the four suits, which are the four elements, which are the four directions, which it's all there for us if we actually realize how to tell our story again. And so, what my journey has really helped me become a stickler for, plus, I have an English degree from McMaster University, and I got certified through the John Maxwell team as a coach, teacher, speaker in 2011. And then I was dating one of the faculty members for 4 years, lived in England for 3.5, had high level access to the leadership, servant leadership industry. And they say it's industry because RAI is actually about nationalism. It's all, when we break down the words, we start to understand that it's not offensive for us to be considered an agricultural unit. And anybody that is, recognizing that we have a person, but we are not a person.
Mm.
Like I am a woman with a person. And so the difference is that like we wouldn't be offended if I said like I have a Zoom account, but I am not my Zoom account. It's made in the likeness and image of my name, but I recognize that I just have access to this platform because of the interface that I chose to pay of price in order to create, so that then I had access to it. That's what our person is. So our person isn't something to be afraid of. It's just to recognize there's a first, second, and third person office to a trust. The grantor of domain claimed the domain under the trust of the triangle. And so then the grantor of domain created an executive director who is up at a higher vantage point to be able to direct the agent of that principal as to how to discharge the account, which is the legal person, statutory person, substitute person, exchequer, for X marks the box. Well, X marks the spot where the treasure is buried. We just
Great.
thought that it was better to let a professional speak for us. So we moved from being in the X, where the treasure is, to then being displaced to the Z of
Right.
Zionism, which is where we get into the stories that we're not familiar with because they're not part of his story, the history books that we thought were ours.
Right. Right. And so much of that information is not even, you know, it's altered. It's some of it's made up. Some of it's completely hacked apart so that it's doesn't make sense. It's
Wait,
altered into their narrative.
you say altered, and then we don't recognize that where do we worship, Tammy? What do we worship to? What do we bow down to in various sects of belief systems but the altar?
Hmm. Right? Yeah, interesting.
And then also, the altars are significant because in the slave training MK Ultra slave
Mm.
training program,
Mhm.
altars represent the alter egos, the alter personalities that actually protect the main personality through fragmentation. So each of
Right.
the personalities are different fragments of what is whole, and then protected by a shield of stronger personalities that don't want us connecting with the essence of who we are because that's where our power is. So altars are very significant because it's a trigger word where this MK Ultra program that I'm not well versed in at all, or not versed in at all, except for knowing it's very significant, it's very
Right.
sinister, and
Yes.
it's time for it to stop.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that's, why we're having these conversations, because more people need to know, more people, people aren't even aware. Some people are just oblivious. Even people who are spiritual or who are working on themselves, people who are, want to make a better world, who want to try and uh, do some things. Still, there's so many people who are in the dark and um, they don't want to have their heads buried in the sand. They just don't know where the light is. They don't know what's when it's safe to come out, who is going to be there to chop off their head or who is going to be there to brush the sand off of their face. Sometimes that's the thing, right? We're just been held in this I don't even know what you call it, this thing since the pandemic, like this
Holding
thing
pattern.
that yeah, we're just like stuck there. And I mean, not all of us, like some of us are definitely, blossoming and doing the work. But there's so many people that are just, they're just stuck there. They're just absolutely frozen with not knowing what to do or where to go or, what comes next. And I think that's part of the problem is not seeing what's next. And you mentioned, um, we've got to know who we are first, and we've got to know what we want, and then we can know where we're going, like SGLA says, right? Who are you? What do you want? Where are you going? Because if we don't know who we are, how could we possibly know what we want? And then, you know, we go all over the place. We don't go in any direction. We don't have goals. We don't have intentions. We just kind of fly all around and, usually land somewhere we don't want to be. So this is the work. This is the real work, I think, that we're trying to get down to. And it's great to um you know speak about things. It's great to go to therapies. It's awesome to connect with other people, but if you're not integrating it, it's just fluff over the top. It's not going to help. It's a band-aid. It's not going to change anything. It's just going to stay exactly as it is. So doing the work that we're doing, the work that you're doing yourself is it's super important. Of course, you speak in a way which I haven't heard a lot of people speak. So that is so valuable in itself because you bring something else to the world that um, we can hear it in a different way. When it comes from you, it comes out in a different way, and maybe that's going to be the thing that's going to help people change. It's going to help people because they can understand, they can relate, they can see. You know, you speak. You said you have English. So that is a very strong skill, obviously. But the way you articulate things and the way that the passion that you share them with is that is the thing. That, I mean, that's what I'm feeling. I hear your words. You speak eloquently. You have, so much knowledge, but it's the passion that's coming from you that people are going to connect with. And that's why we need more of you, more Laura, more people that are like Laura, out there helping. Because if we're not going to touch people and help them feel that thing, then how are they going to know? It's that healing, that leadership, that resonance, that resonance that people pick up on as human beings. We're antennas, and if we're just listening to the things that are, the negative stuff and all that, then that's all you're going to get. You can't rise up. What is Einstein? Is it Einstein who said you can't solve a problem from the same place it was created?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So having new people come out, and I've not heard of you before, so I'm thrilled that
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that our paths have crossed. And it puts another, like, for me, you're just another, I don't want to say tool. I don't want to make you
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
that,
Tell me
but
all. I
but
don't
you are
mind.
like
I want to
another
listen.
instrument. Yeah, you're like
Yeah.
another instrument that I can direct people to, or share you
Thank you.
with. Yeah, because it's so important, and a lot of people communicate in different ways. So
Yeah.
I'm really thrilled that you decided to do the interview, so that people
Thank
can
you.
hear what you're about and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
I applaud your work, and I really appreciate what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you. Well, I'm so grateful for what you're doing as well, to have amassed a collection of characters and souls the way that you have with the different networks, because I think that's really what it's been about. And it's really, we've gotten lost in the profits with an F of corporate structures that place profits with an F over profits with a PH. And there is no PhD for life, because in the scheme of things, we don't get a degree. Because did you know, this is one of the most interesting fun facts that I have discovered, except for I have pieced together so much in the second manuscript, well, the manuscript that I have for what will be the second book that I'm masterminding on. And um, anyway, it's oh, and I lost my train of thought when I tried to give context for where it comes from. But baloney. You know how we always say if something's BS, belief systems, or
Yep.
bullshit, because
Yep.
ship high in transit, and then bull for the bulla, that is the official seal put onto a church document to officialize it. And we don't see the bulla, and we don't see the ship high in transit, and then we just say, oh, you're being disrespectful. But anyway, baloney is actually, it was the first university within this whole school of thought. And what that means, I call it the dia tree, because the dia is the big idea at the top of the tree, or the top of the pyramid. So you got the big idea, and then you've got the ideologies, ology being the study of the thing that it's connected to. So ideology being the study of the big idea, which is the grantor of domain with claim over his domain, that puts the main character into a position of doing. Domain, Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp's house, auxiliary verbiage, transitive verbs that actually become the object and subject of the sentence. So je suis jurist, when we actually stand as je suis jurist, as the principal in our own story, with principles that we will uphold the integrity of to keep us in wholeness. Je suis jurist means I am right, I am law, I am true. Je suis jurist. But je suis jurist is not sui juris, which is the second person agent position within the public office. And with the thing that you called it, the thing is actually called the res publica, which is the republic, which is the public affair or the public thing by definition of what res publica is, which is where the republic stems from. And the republic means we're in the public again and again and again and again, because we forgot that the mixed war is literally between the public and private.
Mm,
Isn't it
right.
insane?
It is insane. I like it though. I like your explanation.
Yeah, well, it's taken me 2.5 years of being really unrelatable. because
Mm.
this is so out of the norm and foreign to most people's concepts of familiarity or relevance that my lack of relatability made me create an acronym. I'm very acronym heavy. Like inner is individual needs necessitate emotional resilience, resonance, and respect. And so
It's a good
like
one.
and peaceful passion, enthusiasm, authenticity, clarity, encouragement, find your tribe, understand what's yours, love what arises, and let go of your attachment to the not now. That's not now. Now being the newly ordered world or the new orderly world that we are now creating. And then real
Mm.
being what started the string of acronyms, being relatable, ethical, altruistic, and loving.
Mm. Mm. I'm real.
Yes,
I
yes,
am real. Yes, I am. I
yay.
see you are too, which
Yeah,
is perfect. It's where we need to be. It's
yeah,
there's no room for anything else
no.
anymore, I don't think. The time is now, and I'm seeing, there's so many people who are waking up. There's so many people who are actually asking questions and um curious. I guess curious is a really good word
Yeah.
because it's scary. It's scary when we've been under this way of being for such a long time to think about something that's different,
Yeah.
to think about something that, what if that is true? What if that is so? How does that look for me? But if we haven't, going back to the thing we talked about before, if you don't know who you are, then you can't see yourself in that. You can't It's very difficult to see yourself in a new situation if you can't even see yourself.
Well, I see is very different from when someone else is able to do it for us because we've made someone else the authority. When we say the book and we know what book we're referring to because we've given our power to the book that we say is our book, our Bible, our word of God, our word of the grantor of domain, that we actually then allowed ourselves to fall under Noah's house because I know the truth,
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh
right?
yeah, that's amazing. Yep, I love it.
Yeah,
How very fun.
that's literally the genesis of the manor role as to why the Bible is used as a trust instrument to entrap consciousness for anyone that agrees to be part of one of the three trees from Noah's house. Shem being where name comes from.
Mm, mm, right. Well, I think you're going to give a lot of people a lot of things to think about
Well,
because
it's not just thinking, it's moving it. So we have to,
yes.
so yes, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tammy. It's just what I've come across. I've devoted the last 2.5 years since November 22nd in 2022. I got the drop that Justinian deception was significant. And I know that because I made a video that morning, and I've got over 1,300 videos on my YouTube channel under my name.
Wow.
So I've been at this since 2015, putting content out there. And I have shared my entire journey of transformation. And I've been candid and honest the whole time because I didn't realize that queens don't tell their secrets because they will be used against us in the court of law. But the court of law is the land, air, and water, which is a multi jurisdictional layer cake of now that people are not recognizing the fact that law and the legal system are two separate entities, just like my body of work is separate from my body, as is the body of jurisdiction of municipal, provincial, federal, and international governments that are claiming jurisdiction because of our willingness to believe the juris of their diction.
Mm, yeah,
Dangerous.
very dangerous. Yep, it really is. It really is. Well, it's time for change.
Yeah.
That's it.
We're doing it. And that's what, so in June, I put together a course called Leveling the Playing Field, Ode to Laura Lees. As the language of empowerment, the people can lease or leave depending on what they please. But it's an opportunity to understand the energy of empowerment To recognize ment always brings in the mental body, but we have to bring the mind and heart into alignment with the belly upwards too, to align those chakras, to realize how power plugs in and cords to us, where we've given our power away, and how to actually use our pen to right the wrongs that we notice and then can notify others of, because that's honorable and that's what's required in the legal system. And so this is what the body of my work. That course, I don't recommend taking it because I'm working on the better one. The book that will become the manuscript that I'm sharing the information, but this is so much information and it makes Laura sound really smart. And people are like, Laura, you're a genius. And it's just like the genie in us means you and I are part of we're individuated expressions of the all that created all of us. And then we created things that then claim us because we didn't realize we had to take up our pen and make counterclaims when someone trespassed on our territory. And going back to Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp's house, passe is not one of the verbs within the acronym, and it is still one of the verbs that follow the same rules of using être, which is the auxiliary verb that makes us implied to be the domain, where no longer are we the main character, we're the domain, which is the claimed domain. And to see that dominion, just add an at sign before the ions and you've got domination. And that is
Yeah.
what the claimed domain is.
Yep, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay,
Yeah.
when is your new course coming out then?
I'm releasing it as we speak, really. I'm working on it. I'm going to my friend Tara Lee's Lomi Lomi workshop this weekend, and then we're going to be strategizing because what we've all been doing is gathering our keys. So we all have keys to doors within the hierarchy that has higher keys to access higher doors, where others have went further down those routes to gain access to those keys. And no longer do we need to go and get all of them ourselves. We just go to the ones that have them. So that's really what the call now is. So as much as it is about a course, I think the bigger piece is how do we put out the information so that there is a framework or a skeleton, which is what the information that I have been putting together and am figuring out how to actually get out in a way that is receivable. And also, while we're gathering all of the people that have pieces to play in the game. And so that's why we're connecting now. And I'm doing this writing challenge where we're going to have a call on Sunday. I just need to schedule the time, but nobody's paid me to do this. And so there's the part where it's just like I'm in the process where nobody actually signed up, but there were multiple people that came to the call because I invited them. And that matters to me more than getting money to do this when it's required. And this is why I've given all that I have away so freely for more than a decade. It's like to whomever much is given, much is required. And I've been given much. My grandparents they believed in me and gave me great grace to be able to care for them and care for me and to help me put forward this information. And while they didn't understand me, my papa would sit in his chair and smoke his pipe and just shake his head at his crazy granddaughter that does things that no one else does, but comes back home to tell him about it and he liked it, you know?
Yep.
Like, I appreciate that so much that they gave me so much. And I'm finding that balance because, in the scheme of things, the people that have the resources, like either they're sharing it or they're putting it into investments, but like people that don't have the money, like I got my own money box. And like I got to work through and shifting in that because I know the value in what I'm offering. But because I know the value in it, there's the part of me that doesn't want to put a price tag on it that prohibits people that need access to it from gaining access to it. And also, it's the youth that need this the most because, in the scheme of things, there's so many mama bears and the fighters that are protecting our youth. But if you're going to be the hero in their reality, they have to play the victim and have a villain to give you a role in their lives in that capacity. So I think it's the youth that actually need to realize they have keys too. And we need them to actually go inward to unlock that door within themselves that activates that part of them naturally that so many of us have done through different ceremonies of different sorts. Well, what if we actually turned life into the ceremony and then made it so that instead of asking for money, but at the same time, like, yes, we all do need money in a world that is oriented that way. So I'm really expressing the honest truth about where I'm at in terms of people paying for that which is so valuable that I don't want it to be a barrier for people to gain access to it. And yet there is also the piece that people value what they pay for. And if they don't have skin in the game, then oftentimes then they don't show up because
Yeah.
they've paid for other things that they need to look after before then getting to the free thing that's always going to be there, except for it's not because in the
Yeah.
scheme of things, like it won't always be free. But right now, I'm giving this away for free because we just need to connect. And I don't have all the answers. Like I have a lot of keys, but there are pieces that would just be that little pixel to complete the hologram.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And that's, again, that's why we're doing these things. That's why,
Yeah.
I've got the Women's Wellness Network. I bring people like you here so that you can share your message. Bump Global TV, that's why we're doing that too, because we want to get messages that are of utmost importance that can actually help humanity out to the world because
Right.
we need to make changes. And if people don't know about it, they can't use it. So yeah,
Right.
thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing. Okay. If our people would like to connect with you, find out more about your course or what you're doing, how can they reach you?
PIWU.ca is the Peaceful Inner Warriors United.ca account. So PIWU.ca is where they can sign up for emails, and then I'll be able to send that to their inbox directly. And then also the Telegram group, Peaceful Inner Warriors United Assembly, is where I'm most active. So at PIWU group is how you can access that group. And that's where I often communicate to the online realms first, because I find that it's a really interesting group. And obviously, anything online is owned. There is nothing truly private or public. It's private public. Like there's a record of this, even if we weren't recording it, somebody was. And
Yep.
so there is nothing that happens outside of when we're actually in the flesh together without any record that is private. And so this is really what I want to help people understand, particularly the youth, maneuvering the cyberspace and cyber environment and really understanding it's literally called no man's land because
Right.
it's no man's territory. No one's claimed it. There's no the man that owns this. Uncle Sam wants you. Like nobody owns it yet.
Right.
And no man's land in a war zone is actually the territory in between encampments that nobody owns. That's what no man's territory is. And that's what the online ethers is. And I'm passionate about it because I'm passionate generally, hence it being the P in peaceful. But it's so important because for a time I recognized at the time I got locked up, my online identity had become more important to me than my real life in some respects because it was where I was feeling significant because I was connecting with people that were like-minded more so than my real environment. And so then, and I was trying to work from home and I was looking after, trying to
Right.
help my grandparents. And so like what where I felt like I was offering the most value was in this public persona that I had with my Facebook account and my YouTube because I was pouring so much out and invading my own privacy in order to do it.
Right.
And that was where I learned. a lot of this about the public and private. And in fact, then I learned it's called a mixed war, quite literally, like David and Goliath. On one side, private, the other public, where you've got a whole office with all of the offices filled within the office, all working together to get the man to bow down to the man.
Right. Ugh. Dang. There's so many layers and levels and things, right? Oh my goodness. Oh my
Yes,
goodness. Yes, I think
yeah.
you've my brain is blown up.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Tammy, and I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and thank you to everyone that has found you, because that's really how it happens. That 6 degrees of separation. It's just like, who do you know that wants to know me, or vice versa? Because in the scheme of things, like we've always been told about our social capital being ultimate importance. It's just, and when I was going through my expanded state of awareness that now I acknowledge I didn't handle well to make the call that I did that changed it all. But like at the time I got the drop, don't squander your social capital. Like don't jeopardize the relationships in your life at this pivotal time, because it takes a lifetime to build trust and a moment to break it.
100%. 100%. And that was one of those things, when I thought, okay, I'm going to go out in the public eye, I'm going to be, somebody who's talking about things. And I just needed to clean my closet. I needed to make sure I was good
Yeah.
and nobody can knock me off.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter what it is, they can't knock me off. So I am, yeah, we're on our way. We're just on our way, and that's that's what we're supposed to be doing, I think. I feel like that. I feel like we're supposed to be getting our message out there. We're supposed to be helping one another. We're supposed to be lifting up one another and walking each other through the steps maybe that help us get there. So thank you so much, Laura, for coming. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and and your smile. You just have such a nice smile. You just light right up when you speak and smile. So thank you for that. And Women of the Women's Wellness Network, we will put all of Laura's information into the comment section so that you can reach out to her, find out more about what she's doing, maybe connect with her, find out about all her what did you got? You got some books, you got some courses, you've got your
Group
what's it called
calls.
again? Tell me what your
There's
group is called again.
Peaceful Inner Warriors United.
Peaceful Inner Warriors United. Okay. Okay, that sounds good. I'm going to go check that one out myself as soon as I get off this call. So, thank you
Yay.
everybody for watching. Thank you, Laura, for being here. And of course, everybody, until next time, be well.
Thank you. How fun. That was